Hi, thanks so much for coming to join me to this webinar, which is our Overcoming Perfectionism. If you think about it, perfectionism is something that most people do struggle with in some degree or another, but it can cause some real serious problems for you because perfectionism is, I'd say it's more comparing ourselves to somebody else. What we think is perfect and what I think is perfect may not be the same thing as what you think is perfect. And so it can cause some real serious problems for us. I'm going to stop my video and start. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Michelle Nagel, and I'm America's #1 resilience expert. And I help people who have had a betrayal in their lives and are trying to overcome from the trauma of that, or from any other trauma that is showing up, because it does. If you don't deal with the stuff in the background, it's going to show up in your life and keep you stuck and unable to move forward in areas that you want to move forward. So today we're going to be talking about perfectionism, and I will share my screen with you and start the PowerPoint. And I'm also going to stop my video so that I'm not going to be a distraction here to you. So again, thank you for joining us. And my name is Michelle Nagel, and I know a lot of people who consider themselves perfectionists, and I'm happy to say that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I am motivated to help you achieve a more healthy set of standards and explore a new mindset. We talk about mindset all the time, and it's getting to be a word that people probably kind of start rolling their eyes at. Oh, here we go again. But all it is just choosing a new way to think. And so if you have any questions during our time together, please feel free to send me a note, and I will respond as quickly as I possibly can. So perfectionism can be really difficult to define. And the pursuit of perfectionism in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, there is a dark side involving self-defeating thoughts or behaviors. While being perfect is often associated with a positive trait, Brene Brown, a professor at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work, says, perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfection is not about healthy achievement and growth. Most people strive for perfection from time to time in certain areas of life. However, to be considered a perfectionist, there are a number of other qualities often associated with one's attempt to be perfect. I have lived with perfectionists before, and occasionally my perfectionistic side shows up, and it can really be quite a problem. So some examples of perfectionism might include spending 30 minutes writing and rewriting a 2-sentence email, believing that missing 2 points on a test is a sign of failure, difficulty being happy for others who are successful, holding oneself to the standards of others' accomplishments, or comparing oneself unfavorably and unrealistically to others, focusing on the end product rather than the process of learning, and believing that anything less than a perfect or ideal outcome is not even worth achieving. Perfectionism is considered to be a personality disposition in terms of psychology. Extremely high performance standards and a compulsion to strive for flawlessness are common among perfectionists. When these behaviors are exaggerated, perfection can become destructive. To set unattainable or unrealistic goals, the only possible outcome is failure, leading to low self-esteem, and depression. According to Psychology Today, there are 3 types of perfectionism. One is self-oriented. And this type of perfectionist is driven by the need to avoid personal failure by setting rigid standards for themselves. This type of person usually has had some type of failure or perceived failure in their life, and it was so painful that they have promised themselves it will never happen again. The second one is other-oriented. And this type of perfectionist is overly judgmental and critical of others, setting unrealistic expectations on their spouses, children, friends, and coworkers. And the third type is socially prescribed. And this type of perfectionist believes they can never measure up to the high standards set for them by others. And unfortunately, this one often is the type of perfectionist that a person becomes because their family of origin is so rigid and so demanding. Perfectionists are synonymous with a number of specific traits, some positive and some negative. The positive traits are they're reliable. I mean, think about it. If they're a perfectionist, they want to make sure that they do everything perfectly, and so they're going to make sure that they get it done, whatever it was they were supposed to be done. They are responsible, they are dedicated, they are driven, and they are persistent. But the negative traits are they are critical, they are unrealistic, they are approval-seeking, prone to depression, and anxious. And sometimes when you're a perfectionist, the negative traits can completely eclipse the positive traits. So you may start out a relationship where you have a perfectionistic person who has these positive traits, but then their criticism and their unrealistic expectations then eclipse and wipe out any of the positive traits that they have. The problem with perfectionism is feeling like one can never measure up. And if you're the second type of perfectionist, which is saying that is other-oriented, then nobody else can ever measure up either, and they will constantly let you down. You always feel, if you're feeling like that you have to hold yourself to a really high standard, you always feel like you're not enough. And the ideals perfectionists hold themselves to do not match the reality of what is truly possible. Perfectionism is truly an issue when various aspects of life become consumed. Many perfectionists develop crippling fears, which lead to the refusal even to try anything, simply because the fear of failure is so great. Think about that. Have you been afraid to try something because the fear of failure is so great that you won't even begin? Whether it be their struggle with acceptance leading to failure or the fear of failure itself, perfectionists get stuck in a vicious circle of failure, lowered self-esteem, depression, and feelings of despair. So, what causes perfectionism? There are various factors contributing to the development of perfectionism. However, perfection often stems from childhood as a learned behavior. Perfectionism may be encouraged in children by parents, driving a child too hard to succeed and expressing disapproval when their child's efforts do not result in perfection. Additionally, children of parents who are perfectionistic are more likely to become perfectionists themselves. They learn what they were taught. The feelings of overwhelming pressure to live up to achievements can lead to perfectionistic behavior. Overpraise for accomplishments may also lead to feelings of pressure to continue achieving, which usually leads to perfectionism. Research increasingly shows that perfection is highly correlated with anxiety, depression, and stress. Because of the nature of perfectionists, they are less likely to share their pain with others, as doing so would mean their appearance as less than perfect. So they've already begun to socially isolate themselves because they don't want anybody to know that they aren't perfect. As I stated earlier, anxiety and depression can be serious conditions that result from perfectionism. These conditions need some form of a treatment. When untreated, other conditions can develop, including relationship issues, eating disorders, and obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. OCD perfectionism In some cases of unhealthy perfectionism, obsessive compulsive disorder can be linked when there's a strong need for things to be done just right. In these cases, it's a common belief that if the compulsion is carried out perfectly, a feared outcome will not take place. OCD perfectionism may perpetuate and reinforce obsessions as well. We all exhibit a certain amount of perfectionism. However, as we've just seen, perfectionists' behaviors also have a dark side. If you're a moderate perfectionist, watch out for the following signs, which can increase and bring you to a harmful level. You know your drive to perfection is hurting you, but you consider it the price you have to pay for success. You're a full-time procrastinator. You tend to be highly critical of others. You do things in the extreme, or you struggle with purely black and white thinking. You have a hard time opening up to other people. You take everything personally. You are highly defensive when criticized, and you're never quite there yet. So now that we have a better understanding of perfectionism, let's take a look at strategies for reducing the negative traits associated with being a perfectionist. To start, let's review some common negative consequences associated with perfectionism we want to prevent or change. Perfectionism, I can't even say it, can reduce overall well-being by causing you to worry about tiny mistakes, creating unnecessary stress. It can negatively impact behavior by creating defensiveness in response to suggestions from others. It can lead to procrastination as the right moment or the right conditions are needed to start a project. Or it can create an all or nothing mindset, paralyzing progress of a project or task. It can lead to the development of self-loathing by reinforcing the belief of not being good enough. It can exasperate a fear of failure and can lead to being overly judgmental and critical of others, and it can hold one back from actually excelling. I know an extremely gifted individual who was creating something beautiful from scratch. And when I looked at it, it was stunning. It was so beautiful, but they didn't finish the project because they found a flaw. It was not a visible flaw. It was something that would easily be corrected, and nobody else looking at it would ever know that it was there. But they knew it was there, and as a result, they put it aside and never finished it because it was no longer perfect. So an interesting story, I am a weaver, and I learned that throughout the centuries, people who do weaving for, like it's what their family did, that's where the last name Weaver came from in many cases, is because the family used to be weavers. But when they were creating something like that, or a piece of art of any kind, they would deliberately put a flaw in it because they believed that only God was perfect. And so they would deliberately flaw whatever their creation was. It didn't make it ugly. It didn't make it non-functional. It was just their way of acknowledging that they really, truly could not be perfect. So it's important to remember having high standards is okay, but when these standards impact the enjoyment of life, it's time to consider a change. Here are a few questions you can answer to help you figure out if your high standards are a problem. Number 1, do you have trouble meeting your own standards? 2, do you often feel frustrated, depressed, anxious, or angry when trying to meet standards? 3, have you been told your standards are too high? 4, do your standards get in the way of meeting deadlines or trusting others to help? How many times have you just thought, I'll just do it myself because that way I will know it is done right? Answering yes to any of these questions is a good indication that your perfectionism may be a problem. So let's review available tools to help you overcome this. There are various strategies and techniques to help perfectionists avoid pitfalls and learn to find enjoyment in life. The three main areas of change we are going to focus on are: 1, changing perfectionistic thinking; 2, changing perfectionistic behaviors; and 3, overcoming procrastination. Isn't that interesting? You would think that a perfectionist wouldn't procrastinate, but it really is a problem. Perfectionists are often plagued with overly self-critical thoughts. This can also cause perfectionists to have a difficult time seeing things from others' point of view. Additionally, perfectionists get bogged down with the details, which overshadow the big picture. Here are some tools to help achieve a more positive way of thinking. Your thinking needs to be more realistic instead of idealistic. Practice repeating the following affirmative statements. Nobody is perfect. All I can do is my best. Making a mistake does not mean I'm inadequate or a failure. Everyone makes mistakes. To help you take a different perspective, to see things from someone else's point of view, practice asking yourself the following questions. How might someone else view this situation? Are there other ways to look at this? And what would be my advice to a friend who is having similar thoughts? And the following questions can help keep the big picture in mind. What does it matter? What is the worst that could happen? If the worst does happen, can I survive it? Will this matter tomorrow, next week, or next year? Perfectionist behavior stems from the fear of making mistakes. Gradually and consistently facing fears is the best way to overcome these negative behaviors. As crazy as this sounds, I want you to make mistakes purposely. This will help you play with the feelings that come up. Also, try putting yourself in situations you usually avoid out of fear that things won't work out perfectly. Remember, the goal is to get out of your comfort zone in order to realize the end result isn't a catastrophe when things aren't perfect. And here are some other ideas to try out. Show up for an appointment 15 minutes late. That's terrifying, isn't it? Leave a visible area in the house a little messy. Tell people when you are tired or other feelings that you consider to be a weakness. Wear a piece of clothing that has a visible stain on it. Purposefully allow several uncomfortable silences to occur during lunch with a coworker. Send an email that includes a few mistakes. Talk at a meeting without first rehearsing what you're going to say in your head. Try a new restaurant without first researching how good it is. It'll take time and practice before making mistakes feel comfortable. Be consistent, and remember, having anxiety will be normal. Once you become less rigid, you'll feel less anxious over making mistakes. I remember somebody told me once that she went to go swimming. She had not been in a swimming suit for years, and she decided that she would wear a bikini. And she was so incredibly judgmental of her body that putting that bikini on was intensely painful for her. But what she said when she was done swimming, she got out, she went and got dressed and was very proud of herself, actually. And she said, I didn't die. Procrastination is often acknowledged by, or is often accompanied by, perfectionism, because it's the perfectionist mind. If you can't complete something perfectly, it's difficult even to get started. If you are afraid that you won't do something just right, you don't even want to even begin it. And that's how you can start getting into trouble. Unfortunately, procrastination tends to make the situation worse, and it increases anxiety. So here are some ways to help you overcome procrastination. Create a realistic schedule. Try to break down a task into small, manageable steps. Set a goal for each step and reward yourself for achieving each goal along the way. And keep in mind, the goal is to complete the task, not to make it perfect. Just complete it. Set priorities. Perfectionists can struggle with deciding what they should devote energy and effort into. Prioritize tasks by deciding which are most important to accomplish. And remember, it's okay not to give 100% on every task. Ask for help. Everyone needs help at one time or another. There's no shame in admitting you are in over your head or simply struggling with one step of the task. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is a form of behavioral treatment that helps people problem solve. In this case, perfectionistic behaviors are the problem. CBT can help you see the relationship between beliefs, thoughts, and feelings, and subsequent behavior patterns and actions. The process of CBT works by understanding it's a person's perception of events rather than the events themselves that determine how or she will feel and act. Someone with anxiety often perceives negative outcomes, which only strengthens when something bad does happen. The negative thoughts will influence outcomes negatively as well. Cognitive behavioral therapists believe that adjusting thoughts can directly influence emotions and thus behavior. The process of CBT is based on an educational model used to help people unlearn negative reactions and learn new positive emotional and behavioral reactions to challenging situations. In order for a CBT session to be productive, both the individual and therapist must be active participants. Treatment is focused on the goals of each session rather than just sitting and talking about whatever comes to mind. There are a number of tools utilized by CBT to help people in the therapy evaluate their emotional patterns and states. And techniques commonly include journaling, challenging beliefs, mindfulness, relaxation, social, physical, and thinking exercises to make a person aware of his or her emotional and behavioral patterns. CBT is perfect for addressing perfectionistic behaviors, especially when dealing with anxiety or compulsion disorders associated with perfectionism. One of the more debilitating aspects of perfectionism is the constant need to judge, the judgment of self, others, and every tiny detail. Mindfulness is a practice dedicated to awareness of the present moment without judgment. Letting go of judgment may be the key to letting go of perfectionism. Mindful breathing techniques can be helpful to get you started. Try this 5-minute mindful breathing exercise. From a comfortable seated position, close your eyes and bring your attention to the present moment by noticing how you're feeling physically. Bring your attention to your breath. Notice the sensation of the breath going in and out of your nostrils. As you breathe, pay attention to the rise and fall of your chest. And notice the rise and fall of your belly as well. Each time your mind wanders away from the breath, and this will happen many times, notice where it goes, and then gently bring your attention back to the feeling of the breath going in and out. When a thought flitters across the stage of your mind, just say, I see you, I welcome you, and just let it go. And concentrate again on your breath. Start by practicing mindful breathing 5 minutes a day and work your way up to 20-minute sessions. And you may think that this is a waste of time, but it isn't, because of the benefit that you will have on grounding yourself, becoming coherent, and being able to really be present with yourself and where you are in the world. In addition to reducing perfectionistic tendencies, there are numerous documented benefits of regularly practicing mindfulness. These benefits include reduces stress, Mindfulness produces less avoidance and improves emotional regulation, leading to a better mood and better ability to handle stress. It reduces depressive symptoms. Mindfulness has been found to decrease depressive symptoms, anxiety, and stress, as well as increasing self-compassion. It enhances healthy behaviors. Mindfulness can enhance or increase multiple behaviors related to health. With consistent practice, mindfulness can actually alter functions of the brain. Negative thinking and behaviors are the core of perfectionism. Actively working to rewire the brain's negativity for more positive outlooks can be done through the regular practice of mindfulness. Here are a few of my favorite quotes that I think you may enjoy. You're imperfect and you're wired for struggle, but you are worthy of love and belonging. Brené Brown. When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. Lao Tzu. In today's rush, we all think too much, seek too much, want too much, and forget about the joy of just being. Eckhart Tolle. Suffering usually relates to wanting things to be different than they are. Alan Locos. Do every act of your life as though it were the last act of your life. Marcus Aurelius. So jot down your favorite quote and place it somewhere that you get to look at it every day. We have discussed a ton of information today. And so here's a quick summary of steps to take in order to overcome perfectionism. Ditch the negative self-talk. Practice making mistakes. Break up tasks into small, manageable steps and set realistic expectations to avoid procrastination. Prioritize important projects. Keep in mind the big picture instead of getting bogged down by the details. Don't compare yourself to others. Practice living in the moment. So there's lots of really good resources that were used to assemble the class. There's goodtherapy.org, learn about therapy issues, perfectionism. And you can find things at like Why Perfectionisms Ruin You on the Huffington Post. There's one on why being a perfectionist can hold you back in Forbes. And mindfulminutes.com, meditation overcoming perfectionism. There's a lot of good stuff out there if you just look on the internet and look up perfectionism and how to overcome perfectionism, and you're going to find a whole bunch of references to be able to come from. If you're interested in working with me, you can connect with me on Facebook at Speaker Michelle Nagel or michelle@isoulshift.com. And I would love to be able to help you or just have a conversation about what your goals are and what might be keeping you from attaining them, how perfectionism might be keeping you stuck, and also where the perfectionism or the perfectionistic tendencies came from in the first place. That's a really important thing to know. And when you know and understand that, then knowledge is the first step toward healing anything. When you are aware of it, then you can heal it. I love helping people achieve their goals and learn how to be the best version of themselves. And I wish you all the very best in your journey toward letting go. So again, if you have any questions or you want to just connect with me at Michelle with 2 L's, MICHELLE at isoulshift.com. I am always here to support you along the way. And I want very much for you to be able to have a successful and happy life. And thanks so much for joining me today.